Good evening, ladies and gentlemen from across the province joining us online via Facebook Live. Thank you all for attending. My name is Ian Patey, and I'm the moderator for tonight's Meet the Candidates Forum. This event is the second of 4 events being held via Zoom and streamed to the public via Facebook Live. Tonight at 6:30, we heard from candidates from the electoral district of Conception Bay East, Bell Island, and at 8:30, we are hearing from the candidates from Topsail-Paradise district. Tomorrow night, we will hear from the candidates from Conception Bay South district at 6:30 p.m. and the candidates from Harbour Main district at 8:45 p.m. Each forum will be recorded and will be available to be viewed with captions after the event. Our democracy and democratic institutions are not to be taken for granted, and the right to hold free and fair elections is among our most valuable rights. This provincial election in Newfoundland and Labrador is being held during a pandemic and during winter. That can create special challenges for candidates and voters to communicate with one another. And the 3 sponsors of this event, the Conception Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club of Avalon Northeast, and Manuels River, are very pleased to be able to provide this safe opportunity for candidates to communicate directly with the voters of these 4 districts and to help voters to get the information they need as they decide who to vote for in their district. I'd like to give a special thanks to each of the candidates who agreed to participate in this special Meet the Candidates Forum. They're joining me virtually on Zoom while all of you watch on Facebook Live. Let me introduce the candidates to you in alphabetical order. We have Ms. Kathleen Burt representing the NDP Newfoundland and Labrador. And we have Mr. Ken Carter, representing the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul Dinn, candidate for the PC Party of Newfoundland and Labrador and the incumbent, was unable to be with us this evening. Before I explain the rules of tonight's event, I want to invite representatives of the sponsors of this event to say a few words. First, from the Conception Bay Area Chamber of Commerce.
Hi everyone, I'm Margo Susie, president of the CBA Chamber of Commerce. We're delighted to help sponsor this event series. For nearly 40 years, our chamber has been vocal in strengthening business development, marketing, and professional development opportunities, as well as influencing policy decisions.
Sorry, Margo, don't mean to interrupt. We're having a little difficulty with your audio.
Oh.
If you can speak directly into the microphone. You're unmuted there now as well.
Just try to make it closer. Is that better?
Perfect.
Good. I got a piece of paper there.
It wouldn't be Zoom without technical difficulties.
No, absolutely. I want to be the winner on that front. So good. For nearly 40 years, our chamber's been vocal in strengthening business development, marketing, and professional development opportunities, as well as in influencing policy decisions and advocating on behalf of members. We've been active as ever through the pandemic and quick in connecting entrepreneurs and managers with program supports and information. Chambers are a powerful resource and you should have them working for your business. So if you aren't already a member, you should reach out to our executive director, Heather Howard, or our neighboring Topsail-Paradise Chamber of Commerce to get them working for you. Heather's certainly been working hard behind the scenes, and we hope this allows you to learn more about the candidates and their platforms. And you can also join our Chamber's Atlantic Impressions Insight to give you insight in driving better outcomes for your business. We encourage all candidates to get out and talk to the entrepreneurs and hear their stories and struggles as we work collaboratively through economic recovery. We work closely with elected officials, and while we'd like to host this in person, this is the next best thing. So thanks to everyone for coming this evening and watching online, and to the candidates for putting their names forward to represent the district. Keep the chamber close at heart, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Margo. Janice.
Good evening. My name is Janet Rumsey, and I'm the Executive Director for Manuels River. Manuels River is a world-class, nature-based tourism attraction in the town of Conception Bay South. It's a place to discover the river, the local wildlife, our beautiful trail system, and new experiences. Manuels River is staffed year-round, and we are a center for discovery. We are offering exhibits that describe the culture, geology, paleontology, and ecology of the river valley, complemented by a theater and teaching facilities. Our gift shop, cafe, and multi-purpose meeting facilities are here to make the center an important community meeting gathering place. We offer educational and public programs for all ages, as well as community events. All of our events are available through our website at www.manuelsriver.ca. As a registered charity, we also offer memberships for our organization. Tonight, we're very proud to co-sponsor this candidate event as a service to our community. And I thank you for joining in, and I thank everybody for participating.
Thanks, Janet. Finally, as I'm a member of Rotary of Avalon Northeast, I'll provide a few words about Rotary. This event is proudly co-sponsored by the Rotary Club of Avalon Northeast, part of Rotary International, a worldwide service organization founded in 1905. Rotary's motto is service above self, and our club has been proudly serving the CBS and Paradise area for over 30 years. There are about 30 women and men in our Rotary group, and while we have been involved with dozens of service projects, we have been internationally recognized for 3 major projects: Topsail Beach Rotary Park, the Rotary Paradise Youth and Community Center, and the Manuels River Hibernian Interpretation Center, where the club holds our in-person meetings. Despite the pandemic, our Rotary group has been able to adapt and has continued to meet regularly via Zoom and in person when possible to support causes like the food bank and the CBS community gardens, and to add new members. If you're interested in helping to serve others in an atmosphere of fun and fellowship, you should consider joining the Rotary Club of Avalon Northeast. Now, for the rules of tonight's event. Tonight's Meet the Candidates Forum is not a debate. There will be no heckling, crosstalk, or formal rebuttals. We will ask each candidate to be muted while I or the other candidate speaks. The format of tonight's forum and the content of the questions were set by the 3 sponsor organizations without input from any candidate or political party. The candidates were all advised of the sponsor's choice of format, and each candidate was provided with the questions in advance. There will be a 5-minute opening statements by each candidate, followed by 2 minutes each to answer each of the 3 questions on specific issues. The forum will end with 3 minutes each to provide a closing statement. The order of speaking for the opening statements was determined by a draw held before we went live on Facebook Live. I will rotate the order of speaking after that. I will be the timekeeper, and I will hold the candidates to their time limits within reason. In my discretion, I may allow a candidate to end a sentence or a thought rather than cutting them off unreasonably. I will hold my hand up during the final 30 seconds to let each speaker know that their time is almost up. Before the candidates begin with the opening statement, I want to thank both of the candidates for attending, and most importantly, thank them each for putting their name forward to serve you, the voters, in this election. Now we're ready to begin. So for the opening statement, you each have 5 minutes for your opening statement. You may speak on any topic you wish, but this is intended to be your opportunity to introduce yourself, your party, and your leader, and to explain what you see are the key issues and challenges facing our province and your district, and to begin the answer to the question, why should I vote for you and your party? At the draw held previously, it was determined that Kathleen Burke would speak first and Ken Carter would speak second. So Kathleen, please unmute yourself and you may begin.
Thank you, Ian. First of all, I want to thank all the sponsors of this candidate forum. It's a wonderful opportunity to give us a chance to speak to your members and supporters, because certainly these days when it's hard to get out due to snow and ice and also the COVID-19 regulations, it's wonderful to be able to meet our constituents online. I'm glad to give your members and supporters some information about me and why I'm running as the NDP candidate in Topsail-Paradise. Since I moved permanently to this beautiful island with my husband and daughter almost 17 years ago, I've had the good fortune to live in 8 different communities here. In each of these communities, I've met really good-hearted people who love their families, love their neighborhoods, love their province. And I know that Topsail, Chamberlains, and Paradise are no different. I earned my Bachelor of Education degree and my BA in English at the University of Saskatchewan, and have since done a post-secondary teaching certificate from MUN. I've had a teaching career that spans the 25 years in 4 different provinces with both public and private schools. And I've also taught at the College of the North Atlantic for another 7 years. I have a husband who was quite heavily involved in municipal government, both in Newfoundland and in other provinces in which we lived. And we've been together for almost 40 years. We have a blended family. And we've been blessed with 10 grandchildren. And it's because of my grandchildren and my children that I've become active in politics. It was while I was living in the Bonavista area that I felt moved to become very involved in the political scene. In 2012, the Department of Education announced that it was going to close our local school, our local elementary school. So along with some parents and very concerned community members, I helped to mobilize our citizens and supporters to stop this closure. Fortunately, we were successful. I belong to many organizations there, but probably the most influential organization that I belonged to on the Bonavista Peninsula was the Bonavista and Area Chamber of Commerce. I was lucky enough to serve as a community director there on the chamber. And it was while serving on the chamber that I realized that if we wanted to develop the potential of our communities, we had to become more involved with the politics of the province, because there were every obstacle that we came on, we found out was a political decision made by someone, somewhere else. And more than that, I realized that both the Liberal governments and the PC governments weren't really focusing on the health and well-being of my children and grandchildren. They often made decisions based on the benefits to their wealthy party supporters, or because of the expediency of short-term gains, and very often for the purposes of winning another election. They weren't making decisions based on the long-term benefits of the people of this province. And that is why we now have the crippling payments of the Lower Churchill River project, which includes Muskrat Falls and Gull Island dams. That is why we are looking at the contamination of our wild Atlantic salmon by foreign companies using methods they are not allowed to use in their own country, because these methods are not environmentally sustainable. That is why we have sold half of our fish processing capacity to another foreign country who is one of our main competitors in the export of fish worldwide. And that is why outside expertise was contracted over our own homegrown businesses to produce and supply cannabis products. And this is only to name a few of the misguided decisions made by the Liberal and PC governments in the past 15 years.
Thank you, Kathleen. Please wrap up.
I commit to you today that the NLNDP will always put the long-term benefits of your children and your grandchildren front and center when making any legislative decision.
Thank you, Kathleen. Ken, your opening statement. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ian. And Kathleen, good evening to you, and it's great to share this platform with you. Good evening, and thanks to the Manuels River Interpretation Center staff and board of directors, the Rotary Club, and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this important forum. As a candidate, I believe we should avail of every platform to speak to you about ourselves, our party, and most important, our leaders. It is important to highlight leadership during this campaign, as most residents in Topsail-Paradise understand the critical financial situation that we find ourselves in as a province. And they're looking to our current leaders to work collectively with the federal government to get us through this. As such, a key pillar of this election is about leadership, and I will address that in a moment. First, allow me to introduce myself. I was born and raised in Harbour Breton on the South Coast. Along with my wife, Tracy, a public health nurse here in the community, We have lived in Topsail-Paradise for the last 28 years. We have two sons, Jack, who works in the offshore oil industry, and Luke, a grade 11 student at Holy Spirit High School. For the first week of the campaign, our son Jack spent in self-isolation after returning from work. It was tough for him and it was tough for us. But like so many rotational workers, we got through it, and it is so important that we support each other during this pandemic. Many of you would have seen me in the community, as I'm an active member of my church and was treasurer of St. John the Evangelist in Conception Bay South for 7 years. I was also past president and member of the Topsail Elementary School Council, and always participating and volunteering with my kids' activities in the community. From an education perspective, I have a Bachelor of Business Administration and a Bachelor of Technology from Memorial University, and a diploma in food technology from the Marine Institute. I started my career in the fisheries and aquaculture industry, first as a research technologist at the Marine Institute, and then as a product development specialist with the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture. In 1994, I moved to the private sector, working with our family business, and managed the redevelopment of the Southern Port Hotel in Harbour Breton. My family still operates this business, and it remains successful in that local tourism industry. In 1998, I returned to government, where I worked as an advisor to both federal and provincial politicians, including the Provincial Minister of Environment and Minister of Municipal Affairs at the time, Oliver Langdon, and with your current Member of Parliament for Avalon, Ken McDonald. Currently, I am the Senior Special Assistant for Newfoundland and Labrador with the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, and I am responsible for coordinating dealings among various federal ministers' offices with senior levels of the provincial government, industry, and community stakeholders on a range of issues that are significant to Newfoundland and Labrador. As such, I've worked closely with Minister Seamus O'Regan to deliver important programs and infrastructure for our province. I was lucky enough to work on files like the New Atlantic Accord deal, contributing $2 billion to the province in the next 10 years. Almost $400 million in financial support for the offshore oil industry. Millions in funding through ACOA to support businesses during the COVID pandemic, and millions to municipalities like Paradise and Conception Bay South for the COVID Safe Restart program. This is certainly not my first campaign, but it is the first time to have my name on the ballot. And some have asked me, why now? Some will say it's a normal progression for those involved in politics, but for me, it's much more than that. It's about my family and your family. I see my 15-year-old son, and I think about his future and the future of so many just like him. What kind of Newfoundland and Labrador will they have when they finish high school in a couple of years? They need to be prepared to avail of opportunities like we have today in our growing tech sector. My wife, Tracy, a public health nurse on the front lines of COVID-19, the impacts of the pandemic and the stresses that it has put on our healthcare workers are never far from my mind. And my son, Jack, when he is not home, he is working offshore, working in an industry that is going through some difficult times. So far, he's been lucky, but we worry about him every single day. As an MHA, I want to make sure that our youth get to stay in the best possible Newfoundland and Labrador when they graduate. I want to make sure that our healthcare workers have the support they need as we move through the most challenging healthcare crisis in a century. And I want to make sure that our oil industry has a voice at the table as we navigate through this time of uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Now for the first question, and it's on the economy. How will you, as the MHA for your district and as a representative of your political party, work with your local municipal government, local businesses, and community groups to grow the local economy and improve the communities within your district? You will each have 2 minutes, and we'll hear first from Ken Carter.
Thank you, Ian. And obviously, economic development is very important to all of us. Through my whole career, I have been involved in economic development from my workings at the Marine Institute to provincial government, and certainly my position that I'm in now at the Deputy Prime Minister's office. I think Paradise and CBS has some great potential, and we need to start thinking outside the box a little bit, and we need to avail of some of the opportunities, for example, that are growing in our tech industry. But I've learned that the best ideas come from the local entrepreneurs, businesses, community groups such as Manuels River and the Rotary and the Chamber and municipalities. As the MHA, I feel it would be my position to facilitate and connect these great minds in the community to partners such as ACOA, the Ocean Supercluster, the Genesis Center, and the province to build the relationships that is necessary for success. The towns of Paradise and Conception Bay South are well equipped with engaged economic and development planning staff. I worked with them in the past, and I know they work diligently to avail of every opportunity. But let me finish with this. Due to the fiscal situation of our province, we will rely heavily on the federal government and people like ACOA to facilitate economic development in our communities. And I will certainly avail of the relationships that I've built with these groups for the benefit of this district.
Thank you, Ken. Kathleen, you have 2 minutes, same question.
Thank you. That was very good, Ken. The NDP recognizes that municipalities deliver many vital services to our communities, and they rarely have the funding necessary to provide them adequately. So we have pledged to work with municipalities to create a sustainable and obtainable set of funding mechanisms for our municipalities. We need a new formula based on need and the cost of meeting the obligations to provide those quality services. We also pledge to work directly with the municipalities Newfoundland and our communities to develop a multi-year infrastructure plan. This plan would provide mechanisms to determine which communities get what funding and when based on need. We recognize that we can't force a one-size-fits-all formula for regionalization on our communities. Not only is it undemocratic, but what works in one area might not work in another. That's why we were very pleased to hear about Avondale, Colliers, Conception Harbor, and Harbor, Maine getting together to make their service delivery more efficient. And we would certainly do whatever we can to foster that kind of regionalization. We can definitely support the Buy Local, Grow Local, Save Local program being run by the Conception Bay Area Chamber of Commerce. That is right down our line. We're all for keeping money in the province. And if that means taking some of the profit motive out of it, using different cooperative business models, for instance, that keep profit in the area, then that's what we would be looking at doing, because we need to keep our money here.
Please wrap up, Kathleen.
Stop the money from going out somewhere else.
Thank you. Now for the second question. It's health and COVID-19 related, obviously. What do you believe are the biggest issues and challenges for your district regarding the provincial health system and the COVID-19 pandemic, and how will you, as the MHA for your district and as a representative of your political party, work to address these issues and challenges? Kathleen, we'll hear first from you, and you have 2 minutes. Oh, you're on mute, Kathleen.
I'm on mute.
Go ahead.
Well, obviously the biggest challenge we have now and into the next year, or possibly the year after, is to keep this coronavirus under control. We obviously need to make sure that we can vaccinate as many people as we can, especially the most vulnerable. Everything about our economic recovery hinges on that. However, we did learn some interesting things about healthcare and how it can be delivered from the lockdown. And I know many hospitals and clinics are still using those new protocols, not only to protect the workers, but because they're more efficient for the patient as well. So we've certainly seen in Ontario and Quebec the danger that ensues when long-term senior care is privatized, and the NDP is definitely going to fight to make sure that all our long-term care remains in the public sphere. Right now we have good very good service to our seniors in long-term care because they are publicly funded. And that's what we would like to maintain. We also recognize there's other health issues besides COVID-19. And so we would certainly do whatever we can to ensure that all those backlog of specialist tests and specialist appointments are getting done. And that sometimes means that we need more staff in hospitals and in our clinics. And we would be totally in favor of making sure that that staff is there.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Ken Carter, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ian. I can assure you that I hear about these issues and challenges around COVID-19 and frontline workers every single day. As I stated previously, I'm married to a public health nurse, and she is a strong advocate for her colleagues. Every single day, she expresses concern. There is no doubt that we've maxed out our frontline healthcare workers, essential workers, our teachers, and many others during this pandemic. And until the vaccination program is completed, the pressure will remain. Those suffering with mental illness have been particularly vulnerable, and it's important that we continue to reach out and show kindness and caring for our friends. Also, no doubt, COVID-19 has highlighted the vulnerabilities in our healthcare system, and we need to make sure that our communities are able to give individuals the access to healthcare they need and deserve. It's a common theme when I knock on the doors in Paradise and Conception Bay South, that they need access to a family doctor. And I know, as an MHA, I know we need to evaluate the full potential of primary healthcare teams in our communities. And what that looks like in Conception Bay South and Paradise may be quite different from what it looks like in rural areas of our province. In addition, I think we've learned some lessons from COVID-19, and that is that we've been able to avail of virtual visits and phone consultations with our medical providers. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Ken. Now on to the third and final question, and it relates to tourism. Tourism helps to preserve our cultural and natural assets and adds a tremendous value to the provincial and local economy. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has decimated the tourism industry in Newfoundland and Labrador, including your district, causing rising unemployment levels, business closures, and continued financial strain to tourism businesses and the people those businesses employ. What will you and your party do to support the tourism sector in the province and in your district to ensure its survival, recovery, and growth? Ken, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ian. In my current position at Deputy Prime Minister's office, I've been at the table with the Federal Newfoundland Caucus and met with operators and hospitality in Newfoundland and Labrador. Indeed, the sector has been decimated, but many of the operators are remaining resilient. And you're right in your question. There are 3 distinct phases that the tourism industry is going through, or has gone through, or will go through. Survival. The federal and provincial governments have helped by providing access to interest-free loans, rent and wage subsidies, access to credit and CERB benefits for laid-off workers. That has helped the tourism sector, and it will need to be there for some time. The recovery. Once vaccinations are done and people start to travel, we need to be ready and make sure we're competitive and offering some of the best products in the world. For example, many of our tourists arrive in St. John's and travel to Trans-Canada until they get to Holyrood or Brigus and go to Brigus. We need to make sure that we get them down through Paradise and through Conception Bay South as a region so that they can see places like the wonderful Interpretation Center in Manuels. Our tourism sector can only grow if people can get here and it's affordable and convenient access to the province. One of the airline industry has been decimated as well during this pandemic. And I know the federal and provincial governments are working with hospitality in Newfoundland and Labrador on a new air access strategy, which will be very important for the growth of the industry.
Thank you, Ken. Kathleen, you have 2 minutes as well.
Well, tourism has been a very lucrative and important industry to Newfoundland and Labrador. I know it generates over $1 billion in visitor spending each year, at least it did before the pandemic struck. And now the 2,800 or so tourism businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador and the more than 20,000 jobs they provided are all on the chopping block. Now, the Liberal government's answer to this devastation was the staycation, which isn't a bad idea, but it certainly hinges on maintaining a low COVID case load and having very strict visitor quarantine regulations. But it also hinges on ordinary Newfoundlanders and Labradorians having some cash in their pocket so they can take a holiday. And that's where I think the NDP's promise of a $15 minimum wage and the elimination of the small business tax will be of great help. According to the government, $13 million has been spent annually on marketing Newfoundland's people, culture, and natural environment to the national and international audiences. So in the meantime, I think it would make sense to use some of that marketing money for programs to maintain the tourism infrastructure and make sure that it's ready to go when we can get back to traveling. While our party hasn't grappled with all the possibilities to help tourism, I really like the idea of listening to tourism operators and to how to maintain the infrastructure we have. And definitely, as Ken mentioned, we have to do something about the transportation system to make sure that it's ready to go. I'd sure like to see.
Thank you, Kathleen. Please wrap up. Okay, so now on to your closing statements. You each have 3 minutes for your closing statement. You may speak on any topic you like, but you should try to provide the answer to the question, why should I vote for you and your party? We will first hear from Kathleen.
Thank you. Well, I think that it's very, very important for everybody, every voter, to consider why we're having the election now, in the middle of the winter, in the middle of a pandemic, and so on. Well, I guess the pandemic thing can't, that's not going to make much difference because we know we had to have an election sometime before August. But why now? Before we have a budget, before we have even the first draft of Dame Moya Green's Economic Recovery Team's report, why are we being asked to give the Liberal government a carte blanche? What they're asking for is a majority government. And I think voters need to really, really think hard about that. Think hard about whether they can be trusted to make the economic decisions necessary that will help everyday Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Of course, I obviously don't think they can be trusted with this. I think that when we see some of the recommendations from Dame Moya Green's report, it's going to include a lot of privatization, which is not good for keeping money in the province. We're going to see a lot of old-fashioned thinking about money and very profit motivated, which is not a good way to keep money in the province. And so I really, really urge all voters to consider that. People in our province are struggling to make ends meet, and they're worried about affording a good life here at home. And for years, the Liberal and Conservative governments haven't made things better for everyday people. They've had a chance to make it better. They haven't done it. People are tired of politicians from privileged backgrounds who don't understand the needs of the average person. Alison Coffin does not come from, a privileged background. She was, born in Corner Brook, raised on the Burin Peninsula, just an ordinary, average person. And she understands the needs of ordinary citizens here. We know that together we can make practical changes that make life more affordable for everyone, no matter what job you have. Every elected New Democrat is going to fight for your family, for your health care, for good jobs for you, and a healthy environment.
Thank you.
Because without that, nothing else matters.
Thank you, Kathleen. Finally, Ken, we'll hear from you last, and I'll give you 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Make things even for everyone.
Thanks, Ian. I'll try to stick to the 3-minute mark for you. Thanks again for hosting this forum, and thanks to those for watching. For just one evening, it's been nice to be in my warm kitchen rather than out knocking doors in the cold and wet. However, I certainly enjoyed the conversations at the doors. As I stated previously, and everyone understands, Newfoundland and Labrador is in a serious financial situation. People are legitimately concerned about their health care, the future of offshore oil in our province, electricity rates, infrastructure needs, and education. These are some of the issues that I hear from residents in Topsail-Paradise. However, and let me be clear, there is a much bigger issue that affects every single one of us, and that is the absolute need for Ottawa to work with us and get us through this financial crisis. As such, critical negotiations need to be done. There is no room for grandstanding, threats of suing the federal government, or throwing our hands in the air and as a province declaring bankruptcy. That is certainly not good governance and will not get the results that we need. People will have to ultimately decide who they want to negotiate with the federal government, Andrew Furey or Chis Crosby. That is the decision. I'm so proud of my friend and leader, Andrew Furey. I have full confidence that he will negotiate a proper deal with Ottawa. And as a province, we will be in a position to once again grow and prosper. Andrew Furey can't do it alone, but with your support in Topsail-Paradise, I can be an important part of a strong Team Furey. A vote for me will be a vote for Team Furey. On February 13th, let's rise to the challenge together. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you both. That ends tonight's forum. Again, on behalf of the 3 sponsor organizations, the Conception Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club of Avalon Northeast, and Manuels River, I want to thank everyone for watching and to give special thanks to our 2 candidates for participating in tonight's event. Thank you as well to our ASL interpreters. This event has been recorded and it will be available for viewing. Let me remind you that tomorrow night, we will have the candidates from Conception Bay South District at 6:30 p.m. and the Harbor Main District at 8:45 p.m. Each forum will be recorded and will be available for viewing after the event. That's all for this evening. I'm Ian Patey from the Rotary Club of Avalon Northeast, and on behalf of Rotary, the Chamber, and Manuels River, say thank you and good evening.